first ever.
That's a sick intro.
Cheers, mate.
That's really cool. I like that.
No, it's years of working as a teacher, and
nice.
that's the one kind of skill I've got from it. Not talking in front of people. Luckily, I can't see anyone right now apart from you, so kind of works in my favour. Right, let's get to it then. So 3-2, Arsenal. North London is red, as always. St Tottenham's Day as well. Go for it, Alex. What was your kind of view of the game?
Beautiful, beautiful day, St Tottenham's Day. It's always. When was the last time we had one? I think it was. Obviously, it wasn't the. Well, there was one last year, but there was like we hadn't had one for like 5 years or something at some point. It was that. So it's lovely to do it. Lovely to do, as you say, the double sort of away wins. I think the last time we did that was. I don't think we did that under Arsene Wenger. So yeah, loads of like nice stats that came out about from today. So yeah, it was good. It was incredibly stressful though. Incredibly stressful. The last 10 minutes were not fun. And we were just talking before we came live. I don't think that's an Arsenal thing this season, or something. Certainly, it's not something we do very often. Is sort of cling on in games and kind of sort of see things over the line. It's not something I can remember us doing. It feels like we're always either chasing a game or we've won it and we're out of sight. We're never quite like holding on with a victory sort of towards the end. So yeah, it was a bit of a new experience for us. But I think, to be honest, it's kind of indicative of what this team is now and sort of how many faces we have and how many different ways we can play, how many different ways we can respond. And maybe we can start here in terms of, the David Raya response. That is a new Arsenal, to have someone who makes that kind of mistake, puts his hand up immediately and goes, that was me. That was on me, and actually responds and actually probably increases his performance levels after a mistake. I think we're so used to, as Arsenal fans, watching someone make a mistake and then you could just watch them have the intrusive thoughts in their head and just absolutely fall off a cliff. So it was a good game. It was a really good game and really pleased with it. And just got to hope that some City drop points.
No, it's interesting that you say about the fact that we haven't been in that position for a long, long time. And I know you're not a big fan of field tilt, but
hate it.
But
what's field tilt, sorry?
I don't want to get in depth. I'll after the show I'll explain.
These stats guys, God.
Oh no. Yeah. I believe it's the first time we've kind of lost more or less on field tilt since 2023 April again.
Oh my gosh.
So it's
not even worth doing it then, is it? We should take 3 points off us.
No, and it's the City game. It's the City game where we got dismantled essentially, and I think Arteta is showing a little bit of growth. I call it that. I think you mentioned it earlier. It's that idea of taking away the arrogance. I think he kind of talked about himself when he was saying, sometimes you've got to put your values aside. You've got to kind of change the way you go about a game. I didn't expect Partey and Rice to be that deep in this game. And it was almost like Arteta said, we'll invite the pressure on. I'm confident in how we'll play. And as the game progresses, we'll grow into the game. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely, I didn't have grey hair in my beard before that game.
And now you do.
I do now.
I think I've realised recently I've got a ginger beard. The more I grow out, I'm like, I think I'm actually ginger. So I prefer to think of it as the Xabi Alonso beard. Do you know what I mean?
I like that.
A few more gingers in there. Yeah, I think it's tricky, isn't it, when trying to analyze these things, because you're like, how much of it was. I always feel with club led or like sort of, let's say, fan led media, we probably naturally look at the game through Arsenal only lens, and we go, if we played poorly, then that's because we're terrible. And if we played well, it's because we're brilliant. And there's never sort of a halfway house. So it's hard to tell how much of this was the game that we wanted to play and how much of this was the game that Spurs forced us to play. And I think it's probably somewhere in between. I think something Rohan said on the stream earlier was a good point. It's about, like, I think in the final third, we kind of played the game we wanted to play in terms of how, Havertz was performing and Saka and so on. But actually, I think in the first phase, when we were trying to get out, Spurs were all over us. They were all over us. Yeah. I think that's not what we wanted to play. And there was, I think, again, I mentioned this, you're going to hear me repeat myself loads of times, but about the sort of the huddles after the goals, I think we knew that no matter we were scoring, no matter what, like, we weren't playing as well as we could. And I think we're getting shut down, specifically on the left-hand side. I thought Tomiyasu was pressured a lot. I think he had his best game. So yeah, I thought the Spurs did well. I think they used their 2 weeks off wisely, and played a game that I didn't expect them to play. So it's hard to say how much was them and how much was us, but we have to give some credit to Spurs, I think.
Yeah, I think there was obviously, I don't know if you noticed at the beginning of the game, I realised Raya looked very much one of the calmest heads in defence.
Yeah.
There was quite a few. You mentioned Tomiyasu. I found Saliba and Gabriel were kind of getting stretched. They were kind of getting pulled out of slight positions. There was a moment where it wasn't in the first half, but there was a ball over the top directly between the two centre backs, and that sent alarm bells ringing for me in terms of that's not something that we usually kind of associate with those two at centre back. But there was an outball that kept on coming. I think Partey hit it in the first half quite early towards Saka.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, Rice hit it. And I tweeted out because I thought there's definitely something that's being kind of targeted there, especially with Ben Davies coming in. I think they noticed that was going to be like a good outlet. Saka's first touch was incredible. The fact that he could take it down that well each time. And then Havertz made the exact same ball. And then that's where the goal came from. But I think they were well drilled, Tottenham. They definitely surprised me. I think they've used that time wisely. It was interesting because they looked fitter. They looked like they had a rest, but they lacked that clinical finishing. And I think, although it did them favours in one way, I think it also took away that bit of rhythm, that kind of composure in front of goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and they need that with with Timo Werner. Yeah, I thought Spurs did really well. I think I said on the stream, and I can't get away from it, that what you get when you have such a long break is you have. It's tricky to know what you actually gain and what you lose, but what I think you do is the sort of the rhythm in terms of your passing, your first touch, the kind of that sort of the one brain type stuff. And I think for Arsenal, maybe now would be okay, but I think, like, for example, last season in that sort of run, in that sort of first, the first sort of 19 games before the World Cup, wherever it ended up being 16 games. I think that's the sort of period where it would have been a disaster to have any time off. We needed that rhythm just to keep going over and over again, the same patterns. I think for a Spurs team who are a little bit more physical, it's probably exactly what they need, which is why I am quite happy that they play City in a couple of weeks. I think they've actually got something for them. They need that to be able to sort of play in the way that they play. They're such and this is one of my concerns about Ange sort of generally, they're so bombastic. When they're good, they're brilliant, but they rely on that running. They rely on that running power. They rely on getting out too quickly. They rely on Kulusevski and Maddison or whatever jumping on you, jumping down your throat, not allowing you any space and time, the high line, etc. Van der Ven going back. But when that blows up,
Romero going forward.
Romero going forward, exactly. But all that jumping and the running that they do is fine. I think that's why it works so well in that first sort of 10 games. But so yeah, they maximize what they can do. I do wonder what the narrative would be around Ange had they not had those first 10 games in the way they had them. In the idea that if they had the same results, but they just had it more spread out, so they'd been winning generally throughout the season, I don't think teams would see them in the same way. I think the lack of sustainability would be seen. They'd probably be seen as a less consistent team than they are. I think there's a sort of narrative around Spurs that they had this brilliant start to the season and they are good and they just need to recapture that. Whereas I think they actually are a very mercurial team. I think they are reliant on running and things, sort of momentum heading in their way, in the way that we were in sort of 22, 23. I think that's where those comparisons come from. So yeah, as I said, I think they use their what's the word? Their qualities wisely. But yeah, I do worry. I'm happy about it, but I'm concerned for them next season because I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it's just
I think there's a few parallels between them and Newcastle in terms of the season when Newcastle kind of went on. Was that last season? It feels like forever ago.
Last season, yeah.
But the way they use Sam Maximan, the way they used kind of that powerful running, but I think they went on a run. They dropped off a little bit. And there was this kind of media narrative where it's like that, yeah, they're an amazing team and they could be the next, into the top 3, into the top 2. They could be running
Yep.
for the title. And we can see how Newcastle have dropped off. It's really difficult in this league to keep going on. I wonder how well, if they do make 4th place, how that will affect Tottenham playing in the Champions League. I think that will, the style they play, I don't think it will really help them long term. I don't know about you as well. I get a strange kind of vibe from Ange. I appreciate that. I quite respect the fact that he wants to, he's got this core value in the way he plays. And it's almost like we're going to play that no matter who we're playing. However, I think there's a slight arrogance in that as well. And I think Arteta's shown it this season against City. You cannot play that way. You have to kind of at some point put that to the side and go, right, what's best for the club? And I think in some respects, he's doing the right thing. He's doing that. He's breeding it into the team. It's like, this is how we play. These are the patterns to play. However, they kind of lack a plan B. And as you said earlier, we're showing like so many different faces at the moment. They're just showing one.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it develops. I think because there could be a read on it that this kind of super mercurial football is, at the beginning a kind of tone setter, and he's going, this is the way we play and this is how we're going to play this season, and that is it. And then maybe once he gets his players in, he might start to play in different ways. But I agree with you that in terms of his messaging, it feels very much, it's not like, this is the football we're having to play at the minute because of the players that we have. This is what I want to do. We won't change. I think because the groundwork at Spurs had kind of been laid for there to be a kind of messianic figure, in that they needed a leader to come in. They needed someone to come in and go, right, here's what we're going to do. It's like sort of, not to be too sort of traditional, but it's like a load of kids with no parents. It's like it's like you need someone to come in and say and put in a sort of, right, this is your bedtime, this is when you're gonna have meals, this is when, and then everything can kind of flow from there, and then the sort of the structure can allow the freedom to be more, the playtime can be right. We've got an hour for play. Let's really maximize it rather than just we're constantly playing and it sort of feels like it's not really going anywhere. So I think they needed that structure and someone to come in as that sort of figure to sort of be, they got songs about him within about three games. They really obviously needed that. I do agree though that I wonder whether he'll adapt. I do wonder, and I wonder how, as we move forward, whether he might be sort of, this is the way I play. This is not going to change, and it might get a little bit toxic if he doesn't turn, because there will be, and I think there are already. I'm friends with a guy called Harry, who's a Spurs fan, and there are sections of the fan base, he tells me, that are already a little bit like, I don't know, like,
really?
And not massive concerns. They feel they've taken a massive step forward, but we all see what City can do. I think Rob Edwards said about Arsenal recently, but we've all seen it with City for years. They can play any kind of game, and we're beginning to do that. If Spurs to get to a point where it's quite obvious how you beat them, which I think has been shown a couple of times this season, and Newcastle did it recently, and Villa did it to them, and so on and so forth. Not Newcastle. Who did they beat? No, Spurs beat Newcastle. Which way around was it? I can't remember.
Anyway. No, Newcastle beat them.
Oh yeah, Newcastle beat them.
Yeah.
So I think it can be done. If there becomes a pattern of that, and Ange doesn't take any kind of lessons from that moving forward in the summer with players, like I think if he goes all in next summer on more kind of threats in behind and sort of those sort of progressive passes and whatever, and doesn't try and sign his version of a Rice, doesn't try and sign his version of a Tomiyasu at fullback, those types of things that Arteta did, it could get messy for them, I think.
Yeah, I do think as well. It's an interesting kind of thing where he's been a manager for a very long time. People forget this. People seem to think this is a guy in Arteta's kind of mold where it's his first job. It's not. He's been a manager for years and years and years. And it's interesting that he has played this style of football everywhere he's gone. And this is no kind of slight on the Scottish League, but you can get away with doing that.
You can do it.
You can turn up. You can play any game you want, and unfortunately, in that league, you will run away with it. But I think he'll get found out if that is the case here. I don't know how we've ended up talking about Spurs so much.
Spurs pod. There you go.
Yeah. Oh God, no, don't do that. My brother-in-law is a Spurs supporter, so
That's a shame.
yeah, I know it's terrible.
That
This
is a
is
shame.
honest truth. At his wedding, my sister's wedding, they banned the red carpet going into their hotel. He is that.
That's
So
crazy.
so I'm really I'm appalled with myself talking about Spurs for that long. However, talking of Spurs, I did think it was interesting how today we kind of stopped their high line. I thought we kind of got caught out at the beginning of the game, and then slowly but surely, as we kind of grew into it, I think we did start to pick that apart. I think Partey kind of got, and I know this is something that's going to happen with Partey, but he got caught out a couple of times. He got, as he's kind of turning, it was just that sudden kind of mistake recovery. But I think we did start to play against them quite well. The break helped them, but I find at the moment Rice still isn't looking 100% to me. I don't know how you feel about that.
Is in physically or
Yeah, physically. I think he looks, he anticipates everything. He's not like an N'Golo Kante where he's everywhere because he's just energetically can get everywhere. He reads the game so well that he seems to be in the right place at the right time because he can move around the pitch. But I found today, maybe it's just because he was playing deeper, but there were several times where the ball was played and I could see him kind of lingering towards the end of the match, whereas usually he's there to break up play before it even begins. Have you got any thoughts about Rice at the moment? Have you noticed anything like that? Or
not especially. I think what Rice has a role, quite a specific role for Arsenal in that he's covering a lot of ground, and he can do that. He can do that. I think what it is though is when you look at players who are asked to do that, especially in the big teams, they do also have games where they can be a little bit more metronomic. And I think Rice, something that I noticed about him at West Ham is he was the main guy. So he was doing everything. He was kind of, putting out fires and progressing the ball and receiving the ball. And he was absolutely everywhere in that midfield. And I still think there's a part of him that wants to go and win every single game. And sometimes we do need that. But I think there are games where, especially earlier on in the season, where we didn't need that. We didn't always need him to step into every single pocket and drive with every single ball and play a Hollywood pass every single time, or or whatever, or drop into the back line the way he did. He's always running and dropping into spaces and stuff, and that's great. But I think the best players sometimes go, okay, this game is actually going to be won by Saka, so I don't need to jump into that pocket, or I don't need to be as aggressive in that thing. Maybe I can allow this, I can give the ball to Jorginho and let him dictate things for 20 minutes in this game. I think he's still got a little bit of that. I've got to win. I've got to be the person to win the game, and I've got to be the person who is best player on the pitch. Now that is a fantastic attitude, and that's brilliant. But I think as he matures, there might be sort of, especially towards the beginning of the season, games where Rice was good, but he was the best player on the pitch for about 15 games in the Premier League in a row, it will take it out of you, will massively take it out of you. So, and that comes so much from his running and how much space he has to cover and how much influence he has on the game. So I just think over the course of the season, maybe next season, because I agree he's slightly dropped off physically. He's maybe at sort of 60 to 80%, somewhere in there maybe. But I think it's more about managing himself over the course of the season. When he in those England friendlies, he was the best player on the pitch. I'm like, I know you can be that. Can you not be? Can you say to yourself, actually, I don't need to make those runs because it's a friendly and people know I'm good? I think he's still slightly in that mindset.
Yeah, especially when he's playing 90-minute games in the friendlies. It doesn't really help.
You just feel he gets the captain's armband and he goes, he sees the lights, and that's kind of nice in a way. But you also sometimes, there's days and just in life where you're just like, do you know what? I'm knackered at the minute. I just need today to just pass by. Just get through everything, and then tomorrow I'll be back at my best. But today I'm just going to get through it, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? It's you don't have to change the world.
He does strike me as you're probably too young to remember this. There was a game against Greece where David Beckham played for England. You would have watched highlights of it, Alex.
The one we scored the free kick.
Yeah.
I was 4.
See, there you go. That was actually a joke, but now you've made me feel even older. Thanks very much.
Sorry.
He kind of strikes me as every game is that game.
Yeah.
Every game is like it's a fight to the death with him.
Yeah.
I do think as well, maybe having lack of a consistent partner in midfield has made a bit of a difference, because him playing as a 6, him playing as the left 8, has got to be quite hard. And don't get me wrong, he does a fantastic job of both. It's not, it's a great problem to have. But I do feel in the summer, maybe we need to be looking at, I mean, I'm sure Arteta is and the team are. It's not like the scouting network has sat on their backsides for 9 months going, we've got a nice, easy year. We'll work it out in the summer. But I think it will speak volumes if we go for a 6, what type of 6 it is. If we go for an 8 for Rice's future. And I think it will help him. There's so many players over the years that I've watched and gone, what are they? What is their role? We had it with Theo Walcott going, he's a winger, and him going, I want to play up front. I want to play up front. I want to play up front. He played up front and went, actually, I'm a winger. We had it with Oxlade-Chamberlain. We've had it with, I remember Santi. We had Santi playing as a 10. We had him playing as a left winger. Yep. And then slowly but surely he moved back, became that kind of progressive player for us. We've had it with so many players. Ramsey playing on the right, right mid. And I think it's important that we kind of, as much as we want to be fluid and we want to have those options, I think it is important to have specialists.
Yeah, I agree. I think what is, as you sort of saying, what is Rice absolutely best at? What does he do? And you said it earlier, it's reading the game. So the deeper he is, the better chance well, that's not always true. Put where do you want that on the pitch? If you're trying to win the ball as high as possibly, then stick him at the 8. If you're trying to win the ball deeper, or you think that's where the game's going to be, and that's where Mikel always talks about it. Where are the spaces going to be? Where do you want him? He's not going to be, and he might develop, who knows? But at the minute, he's not our progressive passing maestro. Yeah. I think he could become more of a quarterback. His technique is unbelievable. Winning the ball and those kind of lofted passes out wide to Saka or firing it through the lines or whatever. How he develops it is a question. But I think at the minute he's kind of been asked to play every role, and I would love to see him go, actually, let me just maximize what I do, and maybe get someone in the summer who can do a bit more of his running for him, be a bit more of a shuttle, whether that's Amadou Onana or whoever you might be, or it's Frankie de Jong in front of whatever it might be, however you want to do it. And there's many ways to skin a cat, right? But I think the main thing is not having him do every single job in our midfield. He doesn't need to do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say about the ball to Saka, because that's a part of our game that we're sorely missing right now. The cross-field passing. Yeah, exactly. We are really, really lacking in that, and it's a huge outlet for us. We've got 2 players in Martinelli and Saka who are capable of stretching the play in that way. I'd say Trossard would struggle a little bit simply pace-wise. He's fantastic touch, but I think the way that he runs is a different, in a different way to Martinelli. But yeah, I think with Rice, we need to know what he is. I think that's the biggest thing. Kind of moving on from there, I was going to ask you a couple of questions. I've got a couple of questions for you, Alex.
Go for it, sir.
Thinking about summer. So if we have to get rid of a couple of players, and I'm not talking about the Reece Nelsons or the Cedrics, as much as there'd be people saying no, we need to keep Cedric. He's great on tours and things like that.
Yeah, Emirates Stadium tour.
Selling merch.
Yeah,
he's good at that stuff. Walking
in the armory.
Yeah.
Walking win.
But a couple of harder calls. If you're going to have to sell one, Zinchenko, Kivior. And the reason that I'm thinking this, I'm presuming Kivior is actually coming as a left centre back. Really, we've got Timber coming back. Zinchenko's having a poor year. We've got Tomiyasu who can play there. Which goes and why?
Yeah, the left back slot's interesting. So I think James McNicholas put something out about that Arsenal are looking at left back. And I don't know. I don't know. I think what we're missing at the minute is an overlapping profile on the left, but that might change because Ben White could basically do anything. But that might change depending on the dynamics of that left hand side of what we do sort of moving forward. So it's all going to be slightly relative to one another.
So what you're saying is we need Tierney to return.
What I'm saying is give Kieran Tierney a 5-year deal. Make him coach. I think there's that missing, but to be honest, I'd rather address the left-hand side dynamics further forward. And I think Timber on the underlap might be more of a dagger next season to teams than a player on the overlap. I don't think Arteta likes overlapping fullbacks as a kind of a first call. I think he prefers his wingers wide, and probably understandably because it stretches the play for the more technical players in the middle, or more technically in small spaces. So yeah, to answer the question, I think probably Zinchenko, but it's hard because I think what Zinchenko does is he's such a unique player, and I think if in certain games Zinchenko is still like, are there many better players for controlling like that game against Luton Town from fullback in world football than Zinchenko? Probably not. Genuinely, probably not. There's like, if we got Kimmich or whatever, like maybe, but in terms of what's available. But is Zinchenko going to be happy to play a couple of games a season, essentially, in those sort of Bournemouth at home, Luton at home? Well, actually not in Bournemouth these days, Everton at home. Those types of games where Bournemouth are brilliant, where we are going to have a lot of the possession. We need someone to get it forward through the midfield without going direct and too long. Someone who's got the personality on the ball, the bravery on the ball. Someone's going to pick people out in the block. I think Zinchenko also suffers because there's not someone further forward who can receive in the way that maybe we would like to in the block on his side, especially. Rice isn't as adept back to goal. So yeah, I think maybe I'm selling Zinchenko, but only because I think his usage is diminishing. Not because he's not a brilliant player, but because the amount of sort of situations he's useful in is reducing. If he wants to be in those situations and play that many games, which would be 10, 15 games, then fine. I just can't see him wanting to. So I think him. I don't know. I have a feeling one of him or Jesus will go this summer. I just got a feeling. I don't know why.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. Funny enough, the next two I had was Jesus and Martinelli. And the reason I'm saying this is because it's been interesting how in big games recently, Trossard's come in. I find Martinelli, and this is not his fault, he is one of the most isolated wingers in world football right now. The way that we're playing, it doesn't matter if we've got Kai Havertz in that 8 position, if we've got Rice in the 8 position. He is, and he's suffering ironically because of Zinchenko being moved out. I think maybe when Timber comes back in, it would help Martinelli. However, if you were selling one, which would it be? I presume Jesus.
I've got to sell one of Martinelli or Jesus. I'm probably selling Jesus, but then I think I'd need something at centre forward. I think we might need something for centre forward anyway, especially if Eddie's going. And more of a kind of box presence player, but I think that might be someone that grows into that. And I don't think Chidobe's ready yet, but I'd love to see us sign a kind of Xerxes at Bologna, someone who is a bit more of a kind of box presence type player, a bit more of a line leader maybe, to sort of play alongside Havertz, and then that sort of superstar winger, if that is what we want to do. I just think with Jesus, he hasn't kicked on from the player that arrived. What was it? Not last summer, summer before. He just looks at the exact same player and he plays the exact same way as he has always done. He's brilliant at attracting markers. He's sharp in the box. He's going to press for you, whatever. But has he got that? Has he got the calmness and the time for the final ball? I still don't think so. His finishing is always a question. I think he's a little bit ill-disciplined, out of possession. Not to say he's bad, and actually against Man City, he started to change my mind on that left-hand side. But that's a one-game sample. I think overall, in the kind of course of 2 seasons, we've seen more games where he's been ill-disciplined than not. So yeah, he doesn't feel like an Arteta player anymore. Jesus, he doesn't. It's bizarre. At one point,
It's
he felt
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, at one point he felt exactly like an Arteta player, and it really doesn't. Ben White, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, they feel like Arteta players. Those guys who are ruthless and committed in every single phase of play. Where Jesus, it just feels like he comes alive in certain situations and not in others. I think he's a brilliant player, and I think in certain teams he would absolutely cook. But yeah, I think if I had to sell one, I also agree with your points about Martinelli. I made a video on it on Different Up recently. He's massively isolated. He's a massive victim of a lot of circumstance, and people go, "Oh, Grumpy Doctors commented, oh, so you hate Gabriel Jesus?" Yes, I do. So yeah, I do feel sorry for him for the situation that he's in, because I think, Timber, we talked about the switches, we talked about the dynamics on the left-hand side, no Xhaka, the defensive work he's asked to. There's loads of different reasons why. But in the end, there is an individual development aspect to it that he needs to come through. However, he's 22 and Jesus is approaching 27. Was he 27, 28, something like that? Yeah. So, in terms of who am I putting my stock in, who can come over those individual development issues, it's going to be the 22-year-old, not the 27-year-old who's basically proven that this is the player that he is. So yeah.
Not to mention the 3 operations. I think it will be on his knee this time this summer.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a big difference. He seems to have also lost like a bit of a that initial burst. He had almost like it sounds ridiculous, but like a world-class talent over that first 3 yards.
I agree.
He just had an unbelievable turn of pace, and it seems to have just disappeared. I mean, we saw it with the little Cruyff turn in the Champions League. Apart from that, I can't really think of any where he's just had that extra spring in his step. I do worry about him, although I must admit, I do wonder if he'll start to be phased to become our right wing kind of backup almost.
Yeah,
because
the position he was at City, essentially.
Yeah, we don't have any links coming out of the club with that position. We definitely need it, and Saka's going to play every game possible. However, there's not many players that have got that pressing ability of Jesus. He's able to get in similar positions. He's able to play with both feet. So I wonder if that might be like kind of long-term plan for him, and then another season move him on then.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he has the presence for a centre forward. Now we've seen what Havertz can give us as a presence, which is, not to say he's perfect in every phase, and there's not things he could also give us or hasn't got or whatever. But when you just close your eyes and picture Arsenal as a force, that kind of central hub of Havertz is so key to us now, and it's the platform on which Odegaard looks better, Saka looks better, the Trossard looks better, Rice can step forward. Everything sort of comes from that. Jesus, I think, with his gravity pulling everything back, and without, as you say, without that sort of just that thing. Do you remember that game against Leicester where he played in that 4-2 at the beginning of last season? It was a yard ahead of everyone, and that's what makes him brilliant. When he's not a yard ahead of everyone, he's a very good player, very serviceable Premier League player, but he's not. It's like when Hector Bellerin lost his pace. It's like, you're a brilliant player, with that. When you don't have that, you're an okay player, but the pace and the sort of the turn masked quite a lot of your limitations.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, next 2, ready? Partey, Jorginho. Because for me, it was an easy choice
neither?
about a month ago. Oh, really?
Can I say neither?
Yeah.
Sorry, you were gonna say something. Go on.
Yeah, about a month ago, I was very much in the camp of Partey has to go. That's the kind of obvious progression. We get in a similar type of player, like an Onana, like you said, maybe even like a Fofana, but someone with a bit of physical presence. And I think Partey, his injury record's been horrendous. There were links to him leaving. However, it was the Bayern Munich game when he came on, and he was the one who put the ball through to Saka when there was the penalty call at the end of the game. And that one pass was the part where I thought, he's got that in his locker. And
Or the pass to Tomiyasu in the City game.
Yeah, exactly. He's got it in his locker. He's got the ability to carry the ball through the middle. And it's not an easy thing to buy,
No.
It's not a cheap thing to buy either.
No. Yeah, I look at what I think a midfield needs to be. It's always about a balance, and a balance for a purpose, not just a balance, or we should always have. No, there's different games for different things. And I think Partey is enough of I almost imagine it like what they call Venn diagrams, where there's like the crossover.
Yep.
And Partey gives us enough. Teacher, there's enough. Thanks, sir. There's enough of a. I did listen at one point. Crossover against the other player, like Partey, in terms of his progressive passing, in terms of the way he tackles and the manner in which he tackles, that telegraph pass out to Saka, the balls over the top, the first time out of his feet. There's a lot of things that other players don't have in our midfield, as well as the presence and size and experience, etc., which helps. And Jorginho has something slightly different, a little bit more metronomic, a little bit more, maybe in the final third, he's more of your hub than Partey is. A bit more over the top, there's enough sort of, you can sort of mix and match with what we have at the minute. And what I want to do is supplement that. So we then have Odegaard, Rice, Partey, Jorginho, and +1. And who that is, I would argue, you could put Smith Rowe and Vieira as maybe the sort of secondary group there. But they've, I was talking to George about this on the Canon, and he was saying, well, we need to make them the group. And I'm like, look, if Mikel doesn't trust them now, if he hasn't trusted them in this run-in, where's the evidence that this is his next season they're just going to explode? We need to see something from them. So I put them out for the moment. So I say, those the Partey, Rice, Odegaard, Jorginho +1, I think will do us next season for a kind of balanced midfield. And I think it has to be something a little bit more creative, a little bit more punchy, a little bit further forward, something a bit more Phil Foden-y is what I like. That said, taking out one of Partey, Jorginho, I think gives us a lot of problems further back. It just creates a problem that doesn't need necessarily to be there. That said, the Partey injury issues are a concern. If we get an offer from Saudi and we think we can do something else, then maybe. It's just it would feel like taking out the foundations rather than building a roof. You see what I mean? Which maybe we need to do. I'm not saying we don't need to do, but it just feels like another big job to do next summer that I don't think this summer, that I think can wait till the following one.
Yeah, I feel at the moment the left 8 position is the one position we need to kind of identify at the moment. I think a lot of people are talking about number 9. I think don't get me wrong, I'd love like an Isak or Gyökeres, someone like that. It would be fantastic in an ideal world. The same with the left wing. However, we've got Martinelli, we've got Trossard. It's not, it's not a pressing matter to me anyway. I do think a left 8. I like the idea of taking Foden from City. I like that. Thanks, Alex. That's a great one. I'll send that on to Arteta. But
have you thought about Phil Foden at Man City?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, he seems
Kylian Mbappe. Are you aware of this guy?
But I do think maybe that's the main kind of priority. However, to do that, I don't know how easy it is and how easy of a sell it is when you then say, oh, you're going to be playing between Jorginho, Partey, and Rice. It's how you sell that to a player. I don't know.
As a deep player, as a sort of someone who is going to be more of a 6. So I can't see, if we've got Rice, Partey, and Jorginho at the club, I can't see us signing a 6. I think it would be an 8, or someone who's more of an 8, let's say, who maybe could play there in the future, and develop. And I think, again, I look at what profile, what are we missing from our forward areas and our midfield areas? And in the midfield areas, I think we're missing a little bit of crossing from the half space without Odegaard. If Odegaard isn't there, I think we miss that a little bit. And, is that Fabio Vieira? Can he get on the pitch? I think we miss a little bit of receiving high in a block. I think we miss a little bit of progressive passing when we drop deep, because I think Jorginho and Rice are still a little bit shy through the block, and Odegaard I think we'll prefer the sort of the ball out to Saka. I think we miss a bit of a goal threat from the edge of the box because again, Odegaard's brilliant, but that's only on one side. So I think there's a number of things as an 8 and a kind of all rounder who can complement a Rice and can complement an Odegaard. Someone who has a good range of passing. Someone like a Bruno who's snappy and can press for you. I think his out of possession work might cause us not to look at him, but someone on the ball certainly who has kind of everything. If you like, I think Scott Willis did a radar of Bruno, and it was like he can basically do everything for you, and that might be the profile we go for, sort of a more of an all-rounder 8 who is kind of everything, and then we kind of fit in around and give him specific jobs for specific days, and let the others sort of take off.
Isn't it ironic how some of the players that we've kind of either been linked with and moved away from or missed out on, depending, who you're listening to, in Paqueta and Bruno. Yeah. They're 2 players that would fit in so well with this current squad. But I've seen the links to De Jong, about 60 million was mooted, but I don't.
We're not getting him for 60 mil.
No, yeah, exactly what I was going to say. I can't see it at that price. And I do wonder how he would adapt to this league. I had my reservations with him. Having said that, I was one of the people at the time when we signed Jorginho last January and thought to myself, he is a liability in transition, when facing transition. Mm-hmm. And he has completely proved me wrong. He's been fantastic this year. He really has.
Well, I think what I was going to say was what he when you put him in an isolated position in transition, yeah, he is a problem. But what it's done is he's paired him with someone who can deal with that with him. You see what I mean?
It's that balance.
Yeah, and that's always the thing. Yeah, the young thing is, I mean, also Arteta. I think Rohan worked out like Arteta's signed like 48% of his signings from inside the league. Mm-hmm. And you're right. If you look at the links to a lot of these players, maybe apart from like Houssem Aouar, every player who Arteta has sort of really gone after, or you feel like there's been a real, clearly there's enough links to say that there was at least conversations. They've gone on to do really well, usually, and or they've gone on to stink up the place like Mudryk, but you think they would come in and do really well at Arsenal. I think Mudryk would cook at Arsenal, and I think he's just.
I'm so glad you've said that. I was filming. Filming my first, as I said to you earlier, with it'll be called Fodder and Melon once a week, and I was filming that last night, and he was kind of what's the word? Outing me. I'll just put it that way about Mudryk, because I was really excited when we were linked to him. I think just the searing pace alone. It's something we really lack in the forward line right now. We lack that ability to stretch play apart from Martinelli, and I think that's quite often why that 70-minute substitute with Trossard and Martinelli keeps happening. I think that's our only real option right now. I know you've kind of mentioned Rashford as well, because we're also lacking size, and he's got that ability to stretch plays, that pace. But I think environment is king. We've seen it so many times with so many players. We've seen it with the Verons move into this league. We've seen it with the Forlans. We've seen it ourselves with Alexis moving across to Man United, and that was an absolute disaster. And I don't think there was anyone at the time that would say, "Oh, this is going to go wrong." He was one of the best players in the league. But I think Mudryk at a more reasonable price would be. I think under Arteta, it'd be a fantastic buy. He's got a really good track record with Sane, Raheem Sterling, with now Saka, Martinelli, Trossard coming in. He's got a really, really good. Yeah.
It's giving people a structure and telling, and we literally know, the players have told us that he says, I want you to stand here in this phase or in this, Jorginho said it on an Athletic podcast. He was like, if there's a phase of play in the game, Arteta will have thought about it. Every single moment when this is happening, I want you to stand here. When when Ben White's got the ball and he's approaching the final third, you need to be holding width so we can pull that fullback out, and you be there for the switch. When the ball goes to Saka, you need to tuck in slightly. So you can see it with every single player. And Mudryk having a little bit of restriction on what he can do, because the thing with Mudryk is he's got such natural talent that he probably has used that his whole life. In Ukraine, I imagine most of that is just going, right, well, I know I'm quicker than you. I can hit the ball harder than you. I know I can run past you. I know I can do 6 step overs and whack it in the top bins. So whatever. Put him in a system where Pep Guardiola said something about Doku that always sticks with me. He was like, he said to the interviewer, what's Doku's best quality? Dribbling. He went, right. So my job as a manager, what's my job? Is to put him in 9 to 11 dribbling situations a game. And I do that by creating an overload over to one side or whatever, and then quick switching over to Doku. And then he's got space to do what he's best at. Mudryk, half the time, is up against blocks, or he gets doubled up on, or he's in situations where he's too deep, or he's receiving the ball too wide, or whatever it might be. If you get Mudryk in that inside lane isolated, I promise you, your mind changes on him immediately. The same way with Rashford. But the problem is, the same thing with Rashford, and people will get bored of me talking about Rashford, but I get bored of me talking about Rashford. But we see those clips of him jogging around. People say, "Oh, he's so unintense out of possession." Look at the repeat sprints he's being asked to do for United. Look at the distances he's being asked to cover for United. If you were playing that, you'd also start jogging around because you'd be bored of it. You don't want to cover that much space. If you put him in a situation where he's got to run, but he's got to run this much rather than an entire length of a football pitch every 3 minutes because they're always out of possession as well, then you've got a very different prospect and you're managing, the workload. So as you said earlier, environment's a king. And talent ID is all about going, right, what can that player do that I don't have? And if I brought that player in, Kai Havertz this summer, do we have someone with that height? No. Sorry, last summer. Do we have someone with that height? No. Do we have that someone who can crush the box in that way other than Odegaard? Not really. And also Odegaard more works on the edge of the box. If we're talking about crushing the box, actually, we don't quite have that with Havertz. Do you have someone out of possession in the midfield, a little bit further up than the deep line, which is, I imagine, where we imagine Rice would play? Well, when Havertz was there, who can be as good out of possession and physical and wins duels? Probably not. Do we have someone who can platform in the same way on the last line rather than Jesus dropping? Can we platform our wingers further up? Not really. And that's what you see rather than Havertz the flop at Chelsea. You see the potential of what that could be when you look at it at Arsenal. So I love Mudryk, mate. I think he could be so good at Arsenal.
I don't know if you saw him against Real Madrid a couple of seasons back in the Champions League, and that's the one part that I look at and I think in that kind of situation, he was tearing them apart on his own. And we all know how good Real Madrid are in the Champions League. He was doing that and driving the team forward, and I can see him doing that for us. We've got the system in place to kind of put him in those positions, as you say, in his best positions, which is interesting because earlier Lucas Chambers asked this question. So he said, "Would you take Isak or Guimaraes?" Now it's interesting because I think you said earlier about Bruno. Isak's on my radar.
I like Guimaraes. I think he's one of those players who's just kind of good at everything. Like he's got a good passing range. He's snappy. He's got a bit of bite about him. And I think that needs to be slightly toned down. But I think he can run. He can put a shift. I think he's got basically everything you need from a midfielder. My question is running backwards. Is he as committed? But again, a lot of that's environment stuff, and what's expected of you, what's demanded of you. Isak. So Guimaraes is a good player. Does he have a superpower in the way that Declan Rice does in terms of his anticipation? I don't know. I don't think he does. So I don't think you pay more than 50, 60 million for him, and I don't think Newcastle do that for him. Isak is criminally technically underrated. He's on remake. Honestly.
Another player we were linked with.
Yeah, exactly. And it shows you that Mikel's got good talent ID. If the one goal I will point everyone to, not even a goal, it's an assist, is the game against Everton where he's put in a corner and he gets himself out of it along the line. You don't get players of that height unless you're like Zlatan at Ajax. You don't get players of that height with that level of technical quality who can show.
Reminds me of the Berbatov, the goal that he scored when he's in a similar position, and you think he's going to have to turn back, he's going to have to play the ball back. Just unbelievable player.
And
I think also
Isak's got the height as well, and that's a different thing.
Yeah, and that's something we really lack. I also think the way Isak plays with the channel, it could go either way. I'm sure Arteta would be able to kind of articulate it a little bit better than me, but I do find that his channel running would help Martinelli be able to get Martinelli closer to goal, because that's something that really we need to do. We need to get him. The way Martinelli runs as well, he seems to run in a different path to Trossard. Trossard's got a kind of a more of a curved run, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
to be able to get himself inside and get himself into better shooting opportunities. As Martinelli seems to run a lot more direct. And I wonder if we had a player like Isak kind of moving out wide, running into his channels, that would give an opportunity for Martinelli to come inside. Another player is Gyökeres, who seems to be really good at those channel runs, coming onto the left-hand side. He's got the size. He's played in the Championship for Coventry, so he kind of knows how to, handle himself. And our league's all about kind of second ball wins, and I think he's one of these players who would be able to come in, and I don't think he's as much of a gamble as a lot of people are saying, simply because of his kind of past track record and the clubs he's been at. And also, there's a lot of players that kind of come from the Portuguese league that have such success in our league. It's it used to be kind of the German league coming across. Before that was the French league. It seems at the moment the Portuguese league is the one
Ruben
that's
Diaz, Bruno Fernandes, lots of players.
yeah.
No, I
So,
don't think it's as big a jump as people say it is.
No. Right. And final thing for you. So this one, I do wonder how you'll choose on this one. ESR, Vieira. Our number 10 against our best passer. I'll do that in inverted commas.
Yeah, final ball maestro, apparently.
Yeah. Mr. Ozil reincarnate.
I think Smith Rowe has something. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think Vieira might have something that we don't actually have, genuinely. But the question is, can he actually get on the pitch? And that
Sorry, I thought I brought you to tears then with that question.
No, you nearly did. You nearly did. You nearly did. It's incredibly upsetting for me. He might have something we don't have, but also he might not. And we haven't seen it in 2 years. So, we can't just... Basically, what's happened, I think, Arsenal fans have gone... And it's usually Arteta outers, I've noticed. It's people who are sort of generally more negative on the club have said, essentially, that we're underusing or underutilizing Vieira, and, we've got this incredible player. So that's fine, but, I can do 20 keepy-ups under no pressure, on the football pitch or whatever it might be. Like, if you do it under pressure or ask me to, do anything in a stadium with 60,000 fans, whatever, it's a very different proposition, So actually getting on the field and doing it and delivering in the moment is a very, very different question. If Arteta thought he had the next coming of Mesut Ozil in his team, he'd play him. He would. He would. So you're either saying you don't trust Arteta's assessment of Vieira, which is fine, but then Arteta signed him for £35 million, so he clearly does think he's good. It's just a question of whether he's actually getting the team. Or you think that Vieira, or maybe, can I suggest that Vieira hasn't done enough to show that he's worth his place in the team? I don't think we can just constantly put it down to Arteta hasn't given him the chances, and I don't know. I think the conversation about Vieira needs to start going into, is he actually good enough, rather than this mythical final ball thing that everyone just keeps talking about. It's like, we've seen it once against Fulham. Like, we saw Nuno Tavares, nearly score a goal against Man United. What, we're going to live off that? Like,
what a comparison.
One sprint, where he carried the ball 40 yards. Yeah, okay. Does that make him the world's best ball carrier? We need to see it again and again and again and again before we prove that it's right. So I'd probably go Vieira, because I can't see it clicking for him in this league at the minute. That said, it's a higher risk, higher reward with Vieira, is what I'm saying. I think Smith Rowe might have a ceiling, and I don't think it's Arsenal level where we are now. Might be Arsenal level a couple of years ago, but it's not where we are now. So it's more of a safe bet in that he can play minutes and be fine for us and have games, but I'm not sure. Vieira might be something special for us, but it's a bigger risk. So honestly, I'll be tempted to sell both of them and get someone better. Sorry.
Keeping Partey, Jorginho by ESR and Vieira. No, I do agree with you. I think ESR almost missed his calling with that Aston Villa bid. I think in hindsight, I think at the time maybe it was the right choice keeping him. But in hindsight, I think we should have cashed in. I think it would have been better for both parties in the end. And I think it is his level, as you said. I think in terms of Arsenal being where we are now, it is a higher level. If we look at Zinchenko and Jesus, like we talked earlier, I think at the time they were the level to, bring us up. But now we've gone past them. So I think ESR as well, ESR probably has to leave.
Yep.
Which is interesting because when you start going through, I think everyone's unanimous that Eddie's going to go, Nelson, then probably ESR now. Maybe one of Zinchenko, Jesus. There's probably someone else that I've thought about.
And Cedric or whatever. But possibly Zinchenko. Yeah, but I mean, put it this way. There will be people who are very adamant that Smith Rowe has something for us or Vieira has something for us. In the final stages of this season, Mikel did not play them. So when we're looking to improve the squad and we're looking at left 8, the position they play, or we're looking at, left back, the position that Zinchenko plays, or we're looking at number 9, the position that Jesus plays, we have to start having uncomfortable conversations. Do you really want to stop doing certain business in the market, making us better and raising our level even higher to keep around these players? Essentially, I think for a lot of people to just prove they were right about them. And it's boring. It's boring.
I think with FFP as well, they are 100%, in ESR, 100% profit players. And I think part of what Arteta has kind of alluded to is the fact that we're going to start bringing through, I think that's one of, we've all heard about the phases, but I think that's part of the final phases that we'll start bringing players through. And we've got players like Waneri that will start coming through. We've got, certain striker, I'm not going to mention his name before that one. I've seen you tweeting about him today.
Which striker? What, Chido Obi?
Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Yeah. I think we've got options to bring through, and I think at this point, ESR and Vieira are not playing. I don't think they're trusted. I don't think we can trust them in terms of their fitness either. So I think it's time we move them on. We make room for a higher level player, and then maybe someone to move up in from the ranks. I think that would be quite nice. But
agree.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for coming on tonight, Alex.
Pleasure.
Appreciate
Subscribe to what you Forder on Football. Subscribe to Forder on Football. Follow you Forder on Footy on Twitter.
Yes, someone has taken my name.
Oh, really? Someone took Forder on Football.
I know. How does that happen?
Is there someone else called Forder who's Forder?
I don't know. Which is, do you know what the worst thing was though? Was that when I went on and I went for, obviously my name is the same as yours, Alex. I then noticed after I've gone for Forward and Football that you are Alex.
Yes.
So you are AM on Football as well.
Yes. AM on Football.
Even more confusing. 2 Alexes on Football. So
there you go.
So there will be a few more of these obviously coming up. And then there'll be Forder and Melon, and then occasionally. So I know you were talking to Rohan about his handle, trying to sort that out.
Rohan analysis,
yeah. So I think I might go with Cannon Forder.
Cannon Forder, nice, very good. I like that.
So
very
that'll
good.
be coming soon as well. But thanks again, Alex, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely love to. Thank you very much.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now.